In more economic news, the Conference Board just came out with its latest report on consumer confidence, and things are looking very good indeed. Consumer confidence in July soared to its highest level in almost 7 years. And for more on how consumers are feeling and how the economy is doing right now, we are joined by John Spector. He's the president and CEO of the Conference Board. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Sabrina.
So very good numbers, highest number in 7 years. What happened in July to make consumers so confident?
And I think consumers are finally recognizing the fact that we've come out of recession. In this environment and about jobs. We're now producing jobs, creating jobs at a rate of more than 200,000 a month. Last month was almost 300. I think it gives people more confidence.
Right, so 1.2 million jobs were created from February through June. Unemployment rate has fallen to 6.1% from 6.7%. So valid reasons for Americans to be confident about the job market. But what about wage growth? When are we going to start seeing really the job market is going to start influencing wage growth?
Right. Sooner than people think. We think that unemployment will drop close to 5.5% by the middle of next year. And 5.5% is getting pretty close to the time when it's relatively full employment. And at that point in time, we should begin to see wage pressures increasing.
And how will that impact corporate America?
Well, I think it'll impact both corporate America and consumers. On the corporate side, it will these corporate profits, not 6 or 8 months from now, but 12 to 18 months from now.
All right, so you're expecting 5.5% unemployment rate by next year. Where are we going to be seeing the job growth? I mean, where are we seeing jobs created right now?
Well, I think they're all over the place, and I know that there's sort of a simple sense that it's only, either hedge fund managers or fast food workers. But I think the reality is more complex. I mean, the healthcare industry is growing. We actually see job shortages taking place in the healthcare industry. CEOs and senior executives really do face talent shortages in critical functions, in STEM, but also in other areas. And they're serious when they say that they can't find the highly skilled workers in some areas that they need.
And that's why we have to rely on immigrants at this point right now. Okay, we've got the big jobs report coming out on Friday. It's going to give us a sense of what happened in July. What are your expectations?
230 to 240,000. And I think the key is that if it's, materially above 200,000, it helps to continue the momentum that we see in consumer confidence.
All right. So, of course, the difficulty from an investor standpoint when you look at the jobs report is if the number is too good, there's the sense that the Fed will raise rates earlier than expected. How is that going to play out, do you think, on Friday?
Well, we get asked all the time, and we always refuse to say exactly how the stock market will behave. Right. But I think the dynamic with the Fed is as follows. I agree with the consensus that you spoke about a couple of minutes ago, that the Fed is likely to raise rates sometime, I think, in the second half of 2015. The economy still is not completely robust, and I think they have reason to continue to try to support it. I also think, though, that raising rates is not a death knell for the economy. It will increase banks' ability to lend. It will increase the ability for people to get mortgages, to buy houses. Right. So I think that the economy continues to grow even through a raising of rates by the Fed.
All right, so everything seems to be on the right track right now. Housing is a little bit of a mixed bag, but we're seeing that the labor market is improving. What do you think could derail the economy at this point?
Right, well, there's sort of global political and economic risk. Obviously, at this point in time, there are several major things going on that really could, blow up. What's interesting is that in the past, these sort of big events, political or geopolitical, affect consumer confidence, but they only affect it for 3 or 4 months. And then consumers, at least in the United States, begin to focus on the fundamentals. And so even if there is a serious blow-up somewhere in the world, it's not likely to have a multi-year effect on the U.S. economy.
Okay, and lastly, I just want to touch on housing, because earlier we saw that there are mixed reports on housing right now. What is going on in your assessment? Where are we in the housing recovery?
Well, I think the important thing is to remember the long-term trend in housing. We've just interviewed 10,000 people about their housing preferences. And we found that despite the downturn, nothing fundamentally has changed. Most Americans still want to own a home in about the same proportion. And so we see the housing market over time growing at a modest rate, 2.5%, 3% a year for the next 5 years. Obviously, you'll have months and years when it's higher and lower than that. But we see a relatively modest but sustained growth in housing.
And perhaps if we see the interest rates rise, you think banks will be more willing to lend, get mortgages out, which could fuel the housing market?
Yeah, it might not explode, but it should sort of accelerate things in a nice direction.
Okay, thank you so much for joining. That was John Spector, President and CEO of the Conference Board.